Bank Dunia memproyeksi pertumbuhan ekonomi Indonesia pada tahun ini akan tumbuh menjadi 5,2% dari tahun 2016 yang hanya 5%. Apa saja yang melatar belakangi proyeksi ini? Apa saja juga yang akan menjadi sentimen ekonomi dunia dalam beberapa tahun ke depan? Kami akan membahasnya dalam segmen The Analyst. Sudah bergabung bersama kami Sudhir Shetty, Kepala Ekonom Bank Dunia untuk Asia Timur dan Pasifik. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us. The latest World Bank report says that the outlook for developing East Asia is expected to remain broadly positive in the next 3 years. How about Indonesia? Can you tell us more about this?
Yes, so as you said, our overall summary is that the prospects for developing East Asia and Pacific are, and looking ahead past 2017 to 2019 are broadly positive, and within that Indonesia is similar. We expect growth in Indonesia to rise gradually from about 5% to about 5.4% by 2019. And similarly, looking across developing East Asia, leaving aside China, which we expect will continue to slow gradually to about 6.3% by 2018 and 2019. But leaving aside China, we expect the region developing East Asia and Pacific to grow slightly faster to about 5.2% by 2019.
Okay, what drives these projections?
So what drives it is that we are beginning to see an improvement in the global economy. 2016 was the slowest growth in the global economy since the recovery from the global financial crisis. It was of the order of about 2.3%. We expect that to improve
so you
going
can say
forward.
This year is the rebound economy?
This year we expect will be a rebound, and we are beginning to see that as well, including on things that matter for Indonesia, such as we're beginning to see global trade growth beginning to rise. We are beginning to see commodity prices pick up, both of them very important for Indonesia. So that's the basis for our projection looking ahead.
Okay, so what is your projection for the commodities prices? Is it going to be the highest
our projection,
in 2008?
Yeah, our projection is that it will be a very gradual increase. So I don't think we are going to see the commodity boom that we saw coming out of the global financial crisis in the early part of the 2010s. But we're going to see, I think, a very gradual recovery both in energy prices as well as metals prices, minerals prices. Agricultural prices we expect will recover, but even more slowly. But I think the implication of that for a commodity exporting country like Indonesia is that it is good news, but it is not news that you can say things are going to get a lot better. They're going to get better, but only gradually.
Okay. How about the oil price? Is it
oil prices we think will continue to
$100?
No, it's
barrel?
you know, as an economist, I'm very modest about my abilities to look into the future, but I would be surprised if it recovered to that level. I think we're looking again at a continued increase, but a gradual increase. Okay,
gradually increase for the commodities prices. Okay, in China, the World Bank says the growth will continue to moderate. So how big this slowing economy in China impact for the Southeast Asia, because China is the biggest importer for commodities from Southeast Asia. What is the impact of the slowing economy
the thing
in
is,
China?
as you said, our baseline forecast for China is that it will continue to slow gradually. We've seen Chinese growth come down from close to 7% to something of the order of 6.5%. In 2017, and then 6.3% in 2018 and 2019. That degree of slowdown should not affect the economies in this region very dramatically. Now, having said that, one of the things I should be very clear about is that these projections have a lot of, you can have outcomes that are different on both sides. And so one of the things we emphasize in our report is that the risk is quite substantial, that things could happen to the global economy that could make growth considerably slower.
Okay.
So in particular, the things we highlight are the possibility that the US may raise interest rates more sharply than we expect right now, and that would have effects on capital flows, on exchange rates in developing countries, including Indonesia. Second, we might see global trade actually grows more slowly than we expect, and part of that is related to the possibility that China may slow more sharply than we expect. Part of it could be that there may be greater protectionism in particular advanced economies, which we hear about. So for all of those reasons, our main piece of advice to policymakers in countries like Indonesia is to be very cautious. So the title of our report is Sustaining Resilience. So we say that the good news when you look at growth in developing East Asia is that it has been resilient. So this region continues to grow quite robustly, with some exceptions. Some countries are not part of that, but most countries are. Indonesia is a good example. However, to sustain that resilience, part of the recipe for that is for policymakers to be prudent on the macroeconomic front.
Okay, so is it better for Indonesian government to weigh, the potential of the hike of the Fed rate, and then the Trump's protectionism, and then the potential of a trade war between China and USA?
Well, so what we would say is to policymakers such as those here in Indonesia is you've got to prepare for bad outcomes. They may not happen, but you've got to be prepared for them. So one of them is that the US Fed may actually have to raise interest rates faster. Now at this point, most analysts think that there will be 2 more interest rate hikes in 2017. There was already one, that there will be 2 more. But we can't rule out the possibility that there may be 3 more. So in that event, what policymakers in countries like Indonesia need to do is be very careful on monetary policy. They have to be prepared to tighten monetary policy if it turns out that the Fed is moving more aggressively. The second thing is on trade. As you said, there is the threat of protectionism that could hurt this region, because this region, as you know, is very open to trade. Given that, our advice would be that the region needs to look within itself and see, are there ways to integrate regionally. And in our view, for instance, the ASEAN Economic Community offers a great deal of potential, of which obviously Indonesia is a key member, to try to liberalize a bit faster.
Okay, so is it time to tighten the Asian market?
Yeah, it's time to look for ways to, we know that with the US pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, that there is some uncertainty around whether that will go forward. But there are other opportunities. There's RCEP, which has been under negotiation for quite a long time, which could open up access to the Chinese market even further. It might open up access to the Indian market if it's successful. So there are opportunities like that. But even within ASEAN, the ASEAN Economic Community offers opportunities, and one of the things that I know the last Indonesia Economic Quarterly that my colleagues here in Jakarta bring out emphasized was the potential to liberalize trade and services. Within the ASEAN community, within AEC. And that offers a lot of potential as well.
Okay, so we move to the other part of the world, the EU. We know there's like Brexit, and then there are potential, not potential, but there is like some countries in EU will hold the election. What do you think about the EU region and the impact for the developing countries?
Right, that actually adds to our message of caution. One of the things we emphasize is that while we're beginning to see some signs that the global economy is improving, as I mentioned before, trade is growing a little bit faster, commodity prices are rising, albeit gradually, growth in emerging markets, other emerging market and developing economies is picking up. But there's a lot of what we call in the report policy uncertainty. And part of that is what you mentioned, which is the number of elections in the European Union, which could have implications for the future shape of the European Union. And the continued uncertainty as to exactly how Brexit is going to play out. We don't know that. We don't know the exact relationship that Britain will have with the rest of the European Union going forward. So all of that adds to the uncertainty, and that reinforces our message to policymakers of caution.
Okay, we're back now to Indonesia. Indonesian government did tax amnesty program to decrease budget deficits like a couple months ago. So what do you think about this? Is it a good move for Indonesia?
Well, Indonesia, as we highlight in the report, continues to have a challenge of raising revenues, because I don't need to tell you, obviously, that Indonesia needs a lot of infrastructure spending. Indonesia needs to continue to raise spending on social sectors, including social assistance, and that is going to require a larger revenue effort. So in that context, a move like the tax amnesty is a good move in the short run, but it does not substitute for the longer term need to continue to look for ways to broaden the tax base and to improve tax administration. So that will need to be a continued effort of the government. And the good news, I think, is that in the past year, we've seen the Indonesian government be more realistic in terms of its fiscal forecasts, in terms of its forecasts on the revenue side in particular, so that the deficit is seen by markets as being more realistic now. But going forward, I think our view is that there will need to be continued emphasis on looking for ways to raise the revenue to GDP ratio.
Okay, the government, is planning now to cut the government spending, and then, the cost of the government spending definitely to the Indonesia's GDP. So, what do you think about this?
So, the emphasis on curtailing the deficit, on controlling the deficit, is a good idea, and so in the absence of success in raising the revenue to GDP ratio, obviously the government is going to have to look for ways to tighten expenditures. In the process of doing that, what the government, I think, has started doing quite successfully is looking for ways to reallocate spending, to move spending from areas where it is less effective to areas where it's more effective. And in particular, I think there's some indication that social spending in Indonesia on education and on health, on social assistance, can be improved in terms of its targeting, in terms of its effectiveness, and that, I think, offers a lot of potential.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr. Sudhir Shetty, Kepala Ekonom Bank Dunia untuk Asia Timur dan Pasifik, sudah bergabung bersama kami.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.